You're listening to Everybody Pulls the Tarp, the go-to podcast for high performers. I'm Andrew Moses. Each week, you'll hear my thought-provoking conversations with Olympians, pro athletes, CEOs, elite coaches, best-selling authors, and other high performers to uncover their secrets to success. Get ready to be inspired each week when we talk about leadership, teamwork, work ethic, and more. Are you ready? Let's go. Hi, everyone. This week, I'm joined by Team USA Paralympian Sydney Collier. Sydney is a member of the Team USA Para-Dressage team. At age 7, during a routine vision screening, Sydney was diagnosed with Wyburn-Mason Syndrome. Wyburn-Mason Syndrome is an extremely rare, life-threatening condition that caused arteries and veins to grow together, creating vascular malformations in her brain. After a series of experimental treatments, Sydney underwent a risky brain surgery where she suffered her first of 5 strokes that have left her with limited use of the left side of her body. Despite all the setbacks, Sydney remained committed to pursuing her passion of riding horses, something she started doing shortly before the Wyburn-Mason Syndrome diagnosis changed her life forever. At age 16, Sydney earned a spot on the U.S. Para-Dressage team and was the youngest competitor at the 2014 World Equestrian Games. 2 years later, Sydney won the 2016 U.S. Para-Dressage National Championship and became the youngest member of the Team USA Equestrian team at the 2016 Paralympics in Rio. Today, Sydney continues to maintain a rigorous training and competition schedule. I caught up with Sydney a few weeks ago, and we explored ways to stay positive amidst adversity, the power of surrounding yourself with people who believe in you, and so much more. I hope this conversation inspires you to fight through any barriers between you and your dreams. So, let's pull the tarp and get straight to Team USA Paralympian Sydney Collier. For those who are not familiar with dressage, what is the sport of dressage?
I actually, when I first started riding when I was 7, fell in love with the sport of eventing, which actually includes dressage, but it also includes 2 other phases, show jumping and a cross-country phase, where you're basically jumping like logs and other large immovable objects. And at the age of 7, I just fell in love with this sport, and I told my parents, okay, one day I'm going to go to the Olympics for the sport of eventing. And that was kind of my first experience of dipping my toe into the sport of dressage. But it's funny because in eventing, dressage is kind of like the phase that you just kind of get through so that you can go fast and jump your horse. So I never really had as much of an appreciation as I do now. And actually, at the same time that I found horses, I was diagnosed with Wyburn-Mason Syndrome. So it was really, really like it was meant to be in me finding horses at such a difficult time in my own life as well as my family's lives. Any day that we were like in a doctor's office and all of the medical mumbo jumbo was going on, I was always just daydreaming of the horses. I was like, listen, as long as I can go and I can ride my horse again, that's all that really matters to me.
So, Sydney, I want to get into that a little bit. You mentioned that diagnosis, a life-threatening condition with, at the time, very few available options for treatment. How did you find out about the Wyburn-Mason Syndrome, and how was that all presented to you at a very young age?
So I had grown up totally able-bodied, really no indication that there was anything different about me from anyone else. It was just totally by chance that like in elementary school, how sometimes they'll do like vision tests with the charts with the letters. I like just barely failed one of those, and the eye doctor that they had in my school basically just said, you don't really have to worry about it, but if you have good insurance, then you can go to an ophthalmologist and they'll give her glasses and she'll be really excited. And so I was just excited. Oh my goodness, I'm going to get glasses. Like, this is the most exciting thing to ever happen to me. And we go to this ophthalmologist and she looks behind my right eye and literally turns sheet white. She said to my parents, I never thought I would see a case of this in my entire career, let alone my entire life. And little 7-year-old me, like, this is not going anywhere. I'm just like, I just want these glasses. Give me these glasses. That's like all I cared about. and like, I mean, that's basically where my brain was at. But the hospital where I was actually diagnosed told my parents to take me home and pray that I didn't die of a massive bleed, because Wyburn-Mason Syndrome is actually so rare that less than 100 people on Earth have it diagnosed, and it's mainly diagnosed after a baby dies of a massive bleed. So it was just totally by chance that I even lived to be 7 years old. And my mom really, she went home and she wasn't willing to take that as an answer. She like searched the internet far and wide. She found a place in Sweden, a hospital in Sweden that had treated even any cases of AVMs. And then a place, actually, Stanford Medical Center in California, who had any experience with it. And she reached out to them. She said, hey, my kid has this. Would you be willing to take her on experimentally and treat her? And Stanford Medical Center actually came back to her and they said, all of our doctors are adult doctors, but we would be willing to take her on experimentally. And so at 7 years old, we went down to California and I got my first course, cyberknife radiation. And then it takes 3 years to see if that's taken effect. And so after that first course of radiation, just went back to Michigan, continued riding, continued on with everything, because like, even though riding is risky and eventing is risky, my family always saw that it was a bigger risk not to let me ride because I had that much of a passion for it. And so continued on. And then at the age of 11, went back to see if it had any effect on the AVM in my brain that has the highest risk of bleed. And actually, it had gotten bigger. And they decided, okay, now it's time to do a brain surgery. And it's risky and more invasive, but now's the time. And so I actually ended up having my first massive stroke after that brain surgery, affecting my left side, and woke up, couldn't do anything with my left side. I just woke up and I remember being like, okay, how am I going to ride again? How am I going to get through this? And I really committed myself to rehabilitation, all because I had the goal of getting back to riding. Spent 2 months in rehab, and then I went back to Michigan and continued on with my riding.
Sydney, an incredible story there, and such a powerful story of especially how the way that your parents helped you through it and the way you navigated it with such a positive outlook. Let's go back a little bit. So you're 7, 8 years old as you're starting to go through this. What are you thinking? Do you have memories of that time? And I mean, you said at the doctor, you were just thinking about how excited you were to get glasses. What were those next couple of years like? And did you truly understand what you were up against?
Honestly, I feel like I am very blessed because I always, no matter what, even from when I first got the diagnosis, I focused on how unique it made me. Like, something that I remember the most was going back to elementary school after I got diagnosed. And I was bragging to my fellow classmates. I was like, guess what, guys? I'm going to be in the Guinness Book of World Records because I'm the first kid to ever get treated for Wyburn-Mason syndrome. Like, it was always just something that made me even more me. It was never this like dark cloud hanging over me. It was just something that I loved because it made me unique. And even from the beginning, my family never treated me differently, and I think that that's really why I could embrace it so much even from the beginning. And that was a trend that really continued on throughout my entire journey with it.
So at that point, I mean, does someone explain to you the prognosis? Like, it's amazing to look at the way I think kids in particular look at things, right? I mean, the way you looked at this very, very, very severe diagnosis, very, very incredibly rare diagnosis as this positive, this opportunity to be unique and do something different, the Guinness Book of World Records, as you suggested. Do you think maybe that like naivete helped you navigate what was coming next?
Oh yeah, I definitely looking back now, I had no concept of the mortal threat that my diagnosis like posed to me. I would say my family around me, they totally got it. They were going through this roller coaster. Me, I was just living my life. I was like, I mean, even with eventing, like eventing's a very risky sport, even one of the most deadly sports, equestrian sports. And like I from a very early age, I never had any fear of like falling off of a horse, injuring myself, getting back up on. Like I broke my collarbone one time and got right back up on, continued riding. Like mortality was just has never been something I feared because I think I just feel lucky to be here for the time that I'm here. And I think that that's something that my diagnosis has really showed me is I mean, none of us know like our time frame, but for me, the time that I do have, I want to leave the maximum positive impact on the world possible, like the world around me possible, and leave it better for future generations.
Sydney, how did this? Let's get like into more detail about the stroke. So you mentioned this, the first of a number of strokes that you've had now in that very, very invasive brain surgery that was done. How did the stroke affect you? How did it limit you in maybe what you could do physically?
So actually, since I was so young, during when I had that first stroke, I was able to actually rehab pretty well afterwards. I was able to walk with only an AFO, which goes up to below the knee, and I was able to use my left arm. So I returned to school, to middle school, to seventh grade, and I would say that was really the first time that I ever experienced any limitations due to my disabilities. I lost a lot of friends that weren't willing to slow down for me. I lost a lot of friends that just couldn't wrap their heads around me being different. I really went back to school as a totally new me, and at the hardest time in my life, I really found out who my true friends were. And thank goodness I had the horses and the occupational and the physical therapies that I had at that point, because without those, I wouldn't have connected with other people going through similar, like whether it be traumatic brain injuries or similar prognoses, because without that I wouldn't have seen like life goes on. And going back to middle school could have been this really dark period in my life where I was like, well, society won't accept me, so how can I accept me? And like through meeting people through my therapies and through like my barn family and just being able to continue riding through it, I was able to begin to start to embrace the new version of me, which is hard for anyone. But finding that community was big for me. And after that first stroke, I was like, okay, eventing might be a little bit risky post a stroke. So I was like, let's tone it back to just show jump. And and so I spent about like until I was 12 doing show jumping. And then actually I found the sport of para dressage going to watch the World Equestrian Games in Kentucky in 2010. And literally I had this moment almost like out of a movie where I was watching these athletes with bodies similar to mine out there doing what I always dreamed of, representing the USA at the highest level, no matter what limitations their body tried to place on them. And I told my mom and my grandma, who were there with me, I said, next World Equestrian Games and next Paralympics, that's going to be me on that team. Like, I found my next goal. And I realized just because my body's different now doesn't mean that I have to give up on my goals. I can redefine them to match what my body is doing. And for me, that was such a defining moment in my athletic career and my life in general.
Sydney, so what happens next? My understanding is that you made a choice to pursue this path. You set these ambitious goals for yourself. Your family also made a number of sacrifices because you moved from Michigan to train. Talk about that for a moment.
It's been a very winding path. At first, when I first set my sights on it, catch riding was still allowed in the USA. And I had a paint horse at the time. He was awesome about embracing my body, but not the level that you need to be successful at the top level. And so for the first year of being involved in international competition, I catch rode horses all over the USA, which I was very lucky enough to have the opportunity to compete on. I would go in, I would have about 3 hours, yeah, if I was lucky, like 5 hours total training with a horse before I went into the show ring. And I had to really learn how to think quick on my feet. And I would also catch ride trainers throughout this year. So, like, they would just have to learn me and my body and also translate it to a horse that didn't know me and didn't know para. And I attribute a lot of my adjustable headspace and mindset now to that first year of having to just go in, do it, and with an unfamiliar horse and an unfamiliar trainer. And then actually after that first year of catch riding, I connected with a trainer in New York, and my mom and I moved out there to train with him for 7 years. We actually have since relocated to Massachusetts to train with another trainer, and we come back and forth from Massachusetts to Florida every season. And my family has had to make so many sacrifices for me to succeed at the top level of sport. Like my two little brothers, my family, like they've had to basically live with my mom and I on FaceTime and in seeing us on holidays or as often as we possibly can. And I think that that's something that a lot of top athletes a sacrifice that a lot of us have to make to be successful at this level. And I just feel so lucky to have a family that believed in me enough to give me those opportunities, and also sponsors that I've connected with throughout the years to make it possible.
Even your grandparents, I understand at Sydney, were pitching in to help, right? When you and your mom moved?
Yeah. My grandparents actually moved from North Carolina all the way to Michigan to help basically raise my little brothers and to help with my family back in Michigan, and like, talk about a big sacrifice. And it really, to me, having a family that believes in me and my goals that much, that's something that fuels my fire in training and in the show ring every single day. Because just, I don't know that I'll ever have enough words to truly describe how lucky I feel to have everyone that believes in me and supports me, really in my corner and allowing me to succeed and giving me these opportunities.
Does that help you get through days where maybe you don't want to do the training or you're facing a particular setback?
Oh, definitely. There are days that, since that first stroke when I was 11, I've had four more strokes, all affecting my left side. The most recent being literally after I represented the USA, in the Paralympics in Rio. I came back and in October had my fifth stroke and couldn't feel my left side at all. Basically, had to relearn how to live life with no feeling on my left side. And I have so many tough days in training, really trying to connect things that were disconnected for so long because of not having the feeling. And there are some days where I feel a great deal of frustration with what I want to do in my mind, not connecting with my body, and being able to come back to the fact that I have so many people believing in my goals, and the fact that I can motivate other kids like me who have big goals and might feel like it's not possible. The fact that I can motivate them to reach for these goals no matter what, that's really what drives me on the challenging days.
Sydney, what do you do on those days when things aren't connecting and you aren't at your best? How do you push through?
That's a really good question. It's a lot of reminding myself, okay, one bad day doesn't define your entire career, and also our bad days really are what help us step up to our full potential. And for me, like, the bad days help me to appreciate the good days even more. And especially with my left side, I know I get frustrated a lot at it, but a lot of what I've had to do is embrace it through embracing the bad days and saying, okay, that might not be clicking, but let's look at something that is, channeling the negative energy and reforming it into something positive, which, like, we can always learn something from something that we might think is quote unquote negative. There's always something to be learned from something that might seem negative. That's something that I really hold true in this whole journey.
Sydney, I know you keep a incredibly busy training schedule. You talked about some of the movements around the country throughout the year. What does a typical day look like for you right now?
So right now in the morning, I work out, eat breakfast at some point, and then I do my schoolwork. I actually started my master's program thanks to a full scholarship from the USOPC's ACE program in January. So I just started that, and I tend to do my schoolwork in the morning, and in communicating with my sponsors and other people that really allow me to pursue my goals, because I myself don't have the means to. So I really take the beginning part of the day to communicate with the people who are really important and integral to making this whole thing possible. And then we go to the barn and I ride 5 days a week. And I have this awesome piece of equipment over here sitting next to me, and it's called a home horse. And I'll also throughout the day sit on that, and it allows me to bring the horse basically home and work on my body here. And that's also a big thing in the afternoon or throughout the day. I'll use that to really train myself. And also like sports psychology, nutrition, all of those important things are worked into the week. And giving back. I also take time to go and work with organizations here in Wellington or speak nationally, virtually when I can.
Sydney, what you're doing is so incredible. You've achieved so much success. You're continuing to write successful chapters, but what you just said there, the power that you have to inspire others, I think is so important. And the way you bring such positive perspective to everything, I think is such a huge factor in your success and can be such a huge factor in the success of others. That, anybody, if you can maintain perspective, you can really push things in the right direction. What about, like you mentioned, some of the sports psychologists and things like that? What about other mentors and people that you've connected with in riding and in dressage and para dressage? Like, how do those people, influence you, and what role do they play right now?
Oh yeah. This is a big one for me. So actually, I know I mentioned I found para dressage at the World Equestrian Games in 2010 in Kentucky. So when I was in the stands, I saw an athlete sitting in the stands, and I just rolled up to him in a Sydney sort of style, and I was like, "You look like someone I should know." Like, what an introduction, right? He was like, he literally was competing in the biggest competition of his life so far, and he was like, "Oh, hey, it's so nice to meet you." Like, just so friendly, so inviting, and it really the like made it so much easier to approach for me. And he actually, his name was Jonathan Wentz, and he was literally my age, maybe a few years older than me at that point. And he was like, "Oh, hey, while you're here, you should totally get classified so that you can actually get the ball rolling." And he introduced me to the president of the USPEA, Hope Hand, and helped me figure out how to get classified right there at the World Equestrian Games, and really took that time to introduce me to the sport. And throughout 2010 to 2012, in all of the competitions, we would always see each other and we kept in touch. And our biggest goal was to bring youth into the sport, because and to get para dressage included in NAJRYC, North American Junior Young Rider Championships here in the USA, because we firmly believe that the future is in the youth, in bringing youth into the sport. And then actually, so he represented the USA at the Paralympics in 2012, and he totally unexpectedly passed away in October after he represented the USA in London. And that's why after I represented the USA in Rio, I got Jonathan Rides On tattooed on my hand. And because every single day, Jonathan rides on right alongside me, and I firmly believe every day every time I ride down the center line, he's right there with me. And my biggest goal is to, through my riding, carry on our goals and really make him proud.
Sydney, you are making so many people proud. I think there are so many amazing things about your story, Sydney, and your story is just beginning in many ways. But I think the way that other people supported you, the way you support other people, the way you bring everybody along for the ride, the way you're bringing Jonathan along with you as you ride in his memory is so special and so unique. And I have had such a great time speaking with you here. I've learned so much, and I can't wait to see the next chapters that you write in the story of Sydney Collier. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes with me this week.
Totally. Thank you so much for having me. And Jonathan rides on. I'm telling you, like, we're making him proud, and every movement is in his honor. And whatever your goal is, follow it.
Sydney, that's the perfect place to end. Thank you so much, and we'll have to talk again soon. Thank you for joining me this week. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you can catch all of our upcoming episodes. And if you are like me and want a world full of tarp pullers, then leave a review to help others find us. You can also follow me on Instagram at AndrewMoses123 and sign up for my monthly email newsletter at everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter. I'll share tips and insights to help you achieve maximum success and happiness. Today is a great day to pull the tarp. I am rooting for you. See you next time.